A potential track shift with the tropical disturbance in the southwest Caribbean. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We're your home for Caribbean weather, and it's great to see you on a Wednesday. Hope you're doing well. Coming up in this video, we'll talk about what's happening with our slowly developing tropical disturbance here in the southwest Caribbean. All of the newest information on this Wednesday. It's been a very active weather day again. So many areas of heavy flooding rains and some extremely gusty winds. All the newest information on that. A lot to get into in this video. What do you say we get started? We'll start off with our surface analysis here. Again, several tropical waves which continue to bring in a lot of moisture and some gusty winds. One just east of the Lesser Antilles that will be impacting those areas in the coming days. Another one through the central side of the Caribbean, and another one that's been moving through portions of Central America and the Yucatan. And in between, we've had some really gusty winds. And then you get north of there with this frontal boundary, which has been able to slip all the way down into the Leeward Islands. And north of that, especially for the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, portions of the Turks and Caicos, very windy weather, very heavy rainfall in some locations. And then we've even had some heavy rain, but especially some gusty winds up at the Bahamas with some gale conditions. So even outside of this, and we're going to really deep dive into it, there's a lot to discuss. Let's get started. We'll talk about, first of all, what's been happening up here near this frontal boundary. First of all, take a look at the wind gust in Puerto Plata. Just after noon today, they had a 58-mile-an-hour wind gust. If you guys live in that area, I know we have some viewers here at Meteo Mundo who live on the north side of the DR. Let me know about some of these winds that you guys have been seeing. They had a 40-mile-an-hour wind gust, and then they topped it with a 58-mile-an-hour wind. These are rapidly moving showers and storms across portions of Haiti and the Dominican Republic at the hour. The winds have calmed down a little bit there, but it's been a very active day across portions of Haiti, but especially the Dominican Republic, Santo Domingo, on over towards Punta Cana. We look off towards the east. You want to talk about an active day. Here you go. Look at all the cloud coverage, the gusty winds. Those are the numbers that you see here right now in miles an hour, and just the extensive rainfall. It's just been an active afternoon for Puerto Rico, Vieques, Culebra, St. Thomas, St. Croix, St. John, and some of the heavier rain has drifted into the British Virgin Islands as well. Tortola, Yost Van Dyke on over towards the Anegada area, Virgin Gorda, all with pockets of very heavy rain. And this is going to be a setup, not just for the rest of today, but for the next several days. Remember, this frontal boundary is basically stationary, and there's a lot of lift in the atmosphere right now. Take a look at what it looks like on the visible satellite imagery. You're just going to see just a lot of turbulence in the sky. Clouds are moving in all different directions right now. Lower level clouds moving off towards the east, upper level clouds, mid-level clouds moving kind of from a west to east fashion. And this just is a lot of lift. I know there's a little bit of a hiccup there in the visible satellite, so I'll go back to the infrared, but you get the idea, the turbulence in the air that is going to produce the opportunity for some very heavy rainfall. We've had some of that today. This is what the live radar looks like out of Puerto Rico right now. Look at all of the green, guys. Pockets of moderate to heavy rainfall nearly island-wide. This will continue to develop and drift over Vieques and Culebra and St. Thomas and St. John and St. Croix, developing tonight, throughout tomorrow, throughout Friday as well. It's going to be a very active, wet, and potentially flooding period in this area. And because of that, for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, there is a flood watch that will go into effect tomorrow morning through Saturday morning, okay? And that will mainly encompass, or the heaviest rainfall is likely to fall on the north and the eastern sides of Puerto Rico. So places like San Juan and Fajardo would be included in that. Vieques, Culebra off of the east coast of Puerto Rico, and then all of the U.S. Virgin Islands. St. John, St. Thomas, and St. Croix. We're looking at widespread 3 to 6 inches of rain and locally 8 to 10 inches of rain. And friends, that's not what has fallen already. That is what's going to fall in the 48-hour time frame between tomorrow morning and Saturday morning. This is some exceptionally heavy rain in this area. there's going to be multiple hazards, and some of those will be significant. Flash flooding, obviously. River surges, talking about very fast river surges, landslides, and mudslides. If you live in these areas, please take this very seriously. Again, flash flooding can occur very, very quickly. It can come up on you fast, so make sure that you're weather aware. Make sure that you don't drive into flooded roadways as well. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have some heavy rain on the south and the western sides of Puerto Rico, but it does look like some of the heaviest rain will be on the northeast sides and then through the islands. Now, I know my friends in the British Virgin Islands right next door, like, well, Rusty, what about us? All of that information I just passed along, that was official information from the National Weather Service and San Juan. Officially right now, there is no flood watches or warnings in effect for the British Virgin Islands. Doesn't mean that you won't fall under some at some point in time. Please check in with your local government and your local officials. And of course, I'll pass it along as that information becomes available. But for right now, it is the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico under this active flood watch. And man, oh man, I mean, again, this is a period where it could be several, areas of extremely heavy rainfall here across the area. Well, let's see. Let me go back to this. Put this back into motion here real quick. Just give me 1 second. All right. Anyway, so let's get back into kind of this overall situation here. Days of wet weather. That's not going to change, guys. We're going to just continue to see extremely high rainfall potential in these areas. All right. Haiti, portions of the Dominican Republic, especially Puerto Rico, the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, and maybe even the northern sides of the Leeward Islands as well. Places like Anguilla and St. Martin, St. Bart, Saba, St. Eustatius, Statia, maybe St. Kitts and Nevis. You could catch the tail end of some of this heavier rainfall. Again, no flood watches or warnings here. If you've caught if you had any rain for today, let me know in the comments section below. Going to try and bring back on these wind gusts. These are temperatures, so don't freak out. These aren't winds. Here are your wind gusts here. But you can just clearly see fresh winds, 25 miles an hour from time to time. Now, as I mentioned in yesterday's video, generally speaking, the farther south that we go in the Lesser Antilles, the quieter the weather is. Doesn't mean we're not going to catch some scattered showers. Doesn't mean we haven't had some heavy rain from time to time, but it just hasn't been as active of a day. Still had some heavier rain in the southwest sides of Barbados a little bit earlier. I'm going to bring this back to where this visible satellite imagery isn't as wonky, but you can just clearly see we've had some rain develop across portions of Guadeloupe and Dominica and Martinique for today. It's just been more scattered. St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago. Again, widely scattered more than anything else. Nueva Esparta, relatively dry. Same thing for our friends in the ABC Islands. We'll go back now to the west to Jamaica. And again, this orange area is our potential development area, and I'll talk more about that in a second. Now, for Jamaica, we've had some pockets of heavy rain develop here today as well. As I've mentioned with what's happening over Puerto Rico, just very turbulent conditions. Some pockets of heavy rain, some lightning developing as well. Very location specific, but again, there's been a lot of kind of low level cloud coverage here, a lot of dark clouds, and got some pictures and videos to show you out of Jamaica. This is Old Harbor, Jamaica. Patrice sent this in earlier. Look at that appendage coming in from those lower clouds. That beginning of a funnel cloud doesn't necessarily mean it reached the ground, but you can clearly see that beginning to kind of snake down. And that, my friends, again, is a sign of the turbulence in the atmosphere over Jamaica, where you get winds changing with height, you get a lot of spin at those lower base clouds, and then you get some exceptionally heavy rainfall from time to time as well. We go farther west towards the western side of the island. Westmoreland Parish, Charlotte Line sent this one in, and again, just a lot of thick, low-level cloud coverage here, and this will continue to be the trend. We're going to continue to see the opportunity for some turbulent weather, not only across Jamaica, but for the western sides of the Caribbean. Places like the Cayman Islands will be included in that, and certainly our friends throughout Central America and into the Yucatan. We continue to see, again, just a very slow development here, and this may not even get going for the next several days, but there is just a lot of disturbed weather through our area with very heavy rainfall and some gusty winds, and this will continue to move into Honduras and Nicaragua. It's been wet for Costa Rica and portions of Panama. Scattered showers right now over Quintana Roo, back down towards the coastline of both Belize, Guatemala, and even Honduras, and again, passing heavier rain is likely through portions of these areas as well. Up into the Bahamas, we've actually had a little bit more active weather today than what I expected. Now, it's still mainly been about the winds. If I go back over here and bring on the wind gusts again, you'll see that the winds have begun to freshen up here. Now, the gale conditions are likely just on the eastern sides of the island, but you can see Nassau had a 31-mile-an-hour wind. San Salvador had a 36-mile-an-hour wind, and from time to time, this has actually brought in some heavier rainfall. Go back over to the visible satellite imagery here, and again, I'm going to pause this before we get into that little bit of cloud coverage there. It doesn't look as well. We're starting to lose a bit of that data there, but you can just see the east winds have brought in pockets of heavy rainfall. Let's bring on the rain right now. We'll take a look at that. And you can just see underneath some of this cloud coverage from time to time, and get off the satellite data here, loop this up. You can see some of these fast passing showers whipping on by. We had that earlier today, Spanish Wells area of Eleuthera in the Bahamas. Megan Weech sent us that video. Look at the winds and look at that wind-driven rain coming into Spanish Wells there on Eleuthera. I appreciate Megan sending in that video. But again, we've had pockets of heavy rain coming in with some of the squalls, and that has been a situation. And then the seas have been building up. Again, all of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos under a gale watch through Friday. Seas will continue to build mainly on the exposed eastern sides of the Atlantic, the islands into the Atlantic, 10, 12, 14-foot seas, okay? Farther west, sheltered locations, not as much, but still turbulent weather here, still very strong easterly winds, and the seas on the Atlantic exposed waters will stay very, very elevated with some very high swells through the weekend as well. Again, officially, boaters are urged to remain in port through at least Friday. Watch out for some low-lying flooding. Watch out if you're driving along the eastern sides of some of the coastal highways across portions of the islands as well. Told you there was a lot going on, friends, just today, and that's not even before we get into the discussion of what's happening with our system. As we get started with that, I appreciate you guys taking a second and liking this video. Appreciate the support here at Meteo Mundo. Thank you for subscribing to the channel as well. If you haven't subscribed, remember it's always free. It's just a nice way to help support us here. Share this with your family and friends, and you can find other ways to support the channel as well. Let's get into what's going to be happening with our system. All right, so again, 40% chance of development. Nothing is going to happen in the short term. This is going to be at least a few more days before this ultimately tries to develop. If we take a look at the area in orange from the Hurricane Center, it has been slightly nudged farther west because more of the models are beginning to try and turn this eventually west. It doesn't mean that it's not plausible that it goes farther east, but it's just not as far east in the development here, and the models aren't trying to push it towards Puerto Rico anymore. Doesn't mean that the Dominican Republic and Haiti couldn't see direct impacts from this. The bottom line is there's still not a lot of consensus in the models, okay? And we're not gonna know where this is ultimately headed for at least a few more days. Track and intensity are still up in the air. But again, friends, with a very slow developing system, this is to be expected, to not have a lot of answers this far out. I know we've been talking about the system for a while, but this is one that has just been really slow to try and get going. Regardless of development, again, very heavy rainfall is likely through the central and the western Caribbean that can impact all the areas that I've just mentioned here. And again, this is outside of this frontal boundary, bringing all the heavy rain to Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. If this system moves west, rather than coming up towards Puerto Rico and the U.S. and British Virgin Islands and the Dominican Republic, that's good news for those folks because they're already getting the first punch with the heavy rainfall. Could you imagine getting 8 to 10 inches of rain before this even tries to come up? So for those folks, they wanted to try and keep this farther west. All right, so now we're going to get into the models. We'll start off with the GFS model here. Give me just 1 second to load that up. As I do so, and I'm going to take this out until early next week and we'll get a good idea of everything. I've had a lot of emails from you guys regarding vacation plans, and I completely understand asking me about that. Rusty, what do you think about the weather? Should I cancel? Should I go? I never give specific vacation advice because everyone has different plans and different weather tolerances. And a lot of the questions are, Rusty, what does it look like next week or even 2 weeks from now? Obviously, that's very hard to pinpoint when you're talking about a very dynamic part of the year here in the Caribbean and the Bahamas. And obviously, with this system coming into play and not really knowing a lot about how that's going to evolve so far. But the best thing I can do is to keep you guys informed on a daily basis so that you guys can make the most informed decisions, not only for vacation plans, but just for your daily life. If you live across the Caribbean and the Bahamas, what might be impacting you in the days ahead. So we start off with the GFS model. And again, on this deterministic, it is still an eastern outlier, right? We can see it beginning to try and wrap up just south of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. A little bit quicker development than this time yesterday, but still on the far eastern envelope. Now, is this a plausible scenario? Absolutely. Look, the Hurricane Center has the eastern extent of that orange development area as far east as just near the Hispaniola coastline, okay? But it is a fairly far eastern outlier here. Once again, regardless of development, look at the heavy rain that's going to be falling through portions of the Greater Antilles and into the northern side of the Leeward Islands. And by the way, I do have your island by island rainfall forecast coming up as well. But in short order, if we just take a look at the time frame of this, as we get into tomorrow, Thursday, nothing really. Same thing for Friday. Even on the faster GFS, it's not until kind of late Saturday, early on Sunday, the 3rd, that we start to see that low-level center develop, and then really not trying to wrap up until early on Monday morning. So that's why I said we still have some time to monitor this. I don't expect this to ramp up in forward speed as far as trying to develop any quicker. I think it is going to take some time here, and it may not be until mid or the late part of the weekend that we get a low-level center. When we look at the wind profile here on the GFS, these are your surface winds sustained. Again, you're going to see just a broad area of very heavy winds, but in short order, between now and at least Saturday, your strongest winds are still going to be slamming up the eastern side of the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, near the northern sides of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and portions of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. But certainly the Bahamas, that's a lot of wind, guys. Again, the gale watch is for winds of 25 to 40 knots with some higher gusts, and they may not relax a bit until late into the weekend. You can clearly see again, when I let this loop all the way, do you see how the GFS is trying to literally wrap up this storm right here, just off of Haiti, and then try and sneak it back just southeast of Cuba? Once again, the interaction of Hispaniola would have significant impacts if it was really trying to develop this far off towards the east. By the time we get into early on, this would be late Tuesday of next week, we would have a tropical storm here, but there would be so much land interaction, it would be very hard for this to try and develop. Also, just notice that there is a little kink right here as well. There are signs, again, that the GFS and the European along this stationary boundary will try and wrap up some kind of broad circulation. Whether it becomes an actual tropical system or not is still to be determined. I think regardless, it moves north away from the islands, but it will be something to monitor. Again, just could bring more heavy rain and winds to some areas. But on the GFS deterministic, it's right here late Tuesday. Now, if we look at the ensembles of the GFS, so that was the deterministic, you are going to see a shift farther west overall. The deterministic being right here is an outlier. We start to see the development again late into the weekend, early onto Monday and Tuesday, and by the time we get into Tuesday afternoon, again, the deterministic is here, but the ensemble members generally are farther west. Some of them are directly over Jamaica, others are farther west towards the Cayman Islands. So again, on the GFS, early next week, we would put more of Jamaica and Cuba and the Cayman Islands and potentially Central America and the Yucatan in play. I still don't want to get into specific locations or specific impacts yet. We're simply not there. We're still in watch and wait mode, but we have to, and we can look at the trends, of course. And the GFS model has been trending slightly farther off towards the west. As I almost trip over my podium, you notice that, again, there's a couple of weaker signals here in an east to west fashion, where we might try and spin up something weak north of the Lesser Antilles and portions of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Now, to the European we go. Snapshot of Tuesday morning. So basically the time frame, same time frame as where we stopped the GFS. There's a much better cluster on the European model. But let's be clear, this is late Wednesday. By early Tuesday of next week, this system has maybe only moved a couple hundred miles north, still south and west of Jamaica. That's how slow of a development we could have. But many of the European ensemble members are still developing a storm. There is still a high likelihood we get a tropical storm or something even higher, obviously talking about a hurricane, can't rule that out at this point in time, but certainly looking at tropical storm potential here in the Southwest Caribbean, but it may be days away still, okay? And there's still gonna be a lot of turbulent weather as this tries to develop in the form of heavy rain and squally weather. But you can clearly see here, there's not many of the European models that have it very far off towards the east. They are very tightly clustered here, southwest of Jamaica. Again, we have a few members and an east to west orientation trying to develop a secondary system off of that old stationary boundary. We'll see how that plays out. Generally speaking, it would try and go north rather than south and west, closer to either the Turks, the Caicos, or Puerto Rico, Cuba, Hispaniola, places like that. On the European ensembles, so letting this run out again through Tuesday morning, about the same time frame. There's your cluster clearly, right? So kind of the same thing, but just in a broader view. You can see that, and again, a few members here as well. So the GFS deterministic being here is one of the farthest eastern outliers that we see. There has been a bit of a shift more to either drag this system almost due north or begin to turn it north-northwest. Now, I know a question that will be asked is, down the road, if this goes north and west, could it get into the Gulf of Mexico? The answer is possibly, okay? But that is so far down the pipe right now that it doesn't really even warrant discussion. Obviously, if it begins to take this track, we can talk about that down the road. But considering that we're going to be about 5 or 6 days out to even still be here, it doesn't warrant discussion at this point in time. Okay, what does warrant a lot of discussion is the amount of rain that could fall, regardless of how quickly this wants to develop. On this European model, basically the entire Caribbean will get 4 to 6 inches of rain over the next 7 days with locally higher amounts. And I don't mean the islands, I mean the Caribbean Sea. Can you believe how much water could fall on the European model? It's exceptional, right? And obviously there will be other areas overland that could be highly impacted, okay? But there's just a lot of 4 to 6 plus inch rainfall totals, 100 to 150 millimeters. Obviously, I'm concerned about what could be falling here, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, right? Even the Turks, the Caicos, potentially, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, and then what might be happening across the Caribbean coastline of Central America. But there's just a lot of rain that is likely to fall in a lot of locations. Obviously, the wind is the big story in the Bahamas. That should relax beginning early next week some. And then again, this model is based off the GFS, so you're going to see this get closer to Hispaniola. But we know that as this tries to wrap up a bit, we're going to get fresh winds and waves to go along with it. So boaters need to be very vigilant in the local forecast here with the active turbulent weather that I expect. So again, for this disturbance, still no reason to actually prepare, because we have time and it's such a broad storm right now. That means there's a lot of areas that just need to be focused in on the daily forecast. That includes Jamaica, Cayman Islands, Cuba, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Central America, and Yucatan. Yes, I've removed Puerto Rico from that list as of now. It looks like I wouldn't expect a direct impact for Puerto Rico or areas east. I've added the Yucatan because based on that west trend, portions of Quintana Roo could be impacted there as well, okay? If we just look real quickly at the GFS rainfall totals, and we're going to get into the island by island rainfall forecast. When I take this off again, if I extend this out, because this is only 5 days, so we'll do this again here. Let's see, we'll go to the 4th, which is Monday. You can just see, obviously it's going to bring the heaviest rain here because that's where we have the system going on the GFS deterministic. But just to get back over to these areas, and we mentioned, and the National Weather Service in San Juan mentioned the northeast side of Puerto Rico. Well, there you go. San Juan and Fajardo and Vieques and Culebra. It doesn't mean there couldn't be some heavy rain, Aguadilla and Mayaguez and Yauco and Ponce. It doesn't mean that. but we can see that even the models are favoring the northeast sides of the islands. St. Croix and St. Thomas, right? In Roadtown, Virgin Gorda areas, Tortola. You can just see, I'm just putting on some of these numbers for you guys. You know, don't focus on one number, but we focus on the average. And it's right there with that 3 to 6 inch total from the National Weather Service, and maybe, you know, locally higher than that, right? 8 to 10 in a couple of spots. And as I've mentioned, even Anguilla and St. Martin could be included in some of the heavier rain, and then it does tail off relatively quickly. So I just wanted to pass that along as well. Let's talk about your island by island rainfall forecast as we wrap things up. Again, not a lot of rain for the Northwest Bahamas, but it could be really heavy rain and squally weather with the extremely strong winds over the next several days. 20% chance the next couple, 30 on Saturday. We build in the rain chances over the Southeast Bahamas. We build in the rain chances over Turks and Caicos. Cuba's rain chances stay high. Cayman Islands, it's about a 40% chance each day. Again, with the system so slow to develop, it's not going to be really spreading a ton of rain that far north and west, at least in the short term. Belize City will have a 50 then a 60% chance for showers. Cancun and Cozumel, 40 Thursday, Friday, up to a 50 on Saturday. Jamaica's rain chances will go higher as well. And again, very turbulent conditions there. So heavy rainfall and just really squirrely kind of clouds will still be in the forecast. Look how high the rain chances are for the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Puerto Rico, the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, especially through Friday, but even through portions of Saturday as well. Bermuda's basically dry. Anguilla, 70% chance for showers and storms Thursday, Friday. Same thing for St. Kitts and Nevis, drier on Saturday. High rain chances, Antigua, Barbuda, Montserrat, Guadeloupe, tailing off a bit, but still 50-60 on Saturday. Slightly drier the farther south that you go. Dominica, Martinique from a 60 tomorrow to a 40 on Saturday. St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 50 tomorrow, 40 Friday, Saturday. Still pockets of heavy rain in these areas, guys. Still could see some flood watches, still could see some heavy water inundation and a little bit of problems in low-lying areas. That's all still plausible. 50% chance tomorrow in Grenada, 40 across the board for Barbados, 40 across the board for Grenada, 40 tomorrow, Trinidad and Tobago, 50 Friday, Saturday. Suriname and Guyana, scattered showers and a few storms. Nueva Esparta, more isolated. Rain chances will actually build across the ABC Islands, back up to a 40% chance on Saturday. So again, back out to the big perspective. We have our 40% chance of development in this area, but it is going to be very slow to occur, more than likely at least until Saturday that we get a true low-level center to develop. Other than that, areas of exceptionally heavy rainfall and very gusty winds. It's just a very active time across our area. And then we, on top of that, put in the potential for tropical development here in the Southwest Caribbean. Friends, I appreciate you guys. You can follow us across all of social media, Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook. You want to send me a picture or video, and so many of you have lately, and I am very appreciative of it. It helps tell the story. Send it to mymeteomundo@gmail.com. Make sure you include your name and, of course, the location and even the time frame. Hey, Rusty, this was Thursday morning, or Rusty, this was Wednesday night here in Kingston, you know, wherever, here in Ponce. I appreciate it, guys, and I'll try and pass along as many of those here in these videos. You have a specific question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comment section below. And while you're down there, thank you for liking and subscribing. Friends, have a great rest of your Wednesday, and back tomorrow with all the newest information, and I will see you then right here at Meteo Mundo.